Have you ever wanted to just disappear? Not to die or to hurt yourself, but to just vanish for a while, to fall asleep and skip reality, maybe wake up somewhere else, or just hit pause on everything. If you felt that, you are far from alone. Millions of people experience this exact urge every day, but because it feels so difficult to explain, it almost never gets talked about out loud. This feeling doesn't mean you're broken. It's actually a highly logical response to an exhausting psychological cycle that many of us are trapped in. That overwhelming desire to hit the pause button is the ultimate symptom of modern emotional exhaustion, and it's driven by two very specific compounding forces. To understand why, we have to look at something philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer noted. He pointed out a hard truth. We are all permanently trapped inside our own heads. No matter what we do, our subjective minds are sealed off from the rest of the world. This is why you can be standing in the middle of a crowded party, surrounded by friends, and still feel entirely alone. Nobody else can truly see what is going on inside of you. The second force comes from Soren Kierkegaard. He described a state he called eternity, which isn't about living forever, but rather the flat, stuck sensation where time feels like it has stopped moving entirely. We usually call this burnout. When your commute, your job, and your problems repeat day after day, Tuesday feels exactly like Friday. Nothing feels different anymore. When you take that deep, unshakable internal isolation and stack it on top of endless external monotony, you generate an unbearable amount of psychological pressure. Eventually, you will desperately need to find an escape. Our default human instinct when faced with that crushing isolation is to try and break out of it. We put ourselves out there, hoping to finally be seen and understood by someone else. But the thinker Jacques Lacan realized this creates a new problem. He described something called the big other. Think of it as an imaginary judge living inside your head that you are constantly trying to impress. This diagram shows how social media weaponizes that imaginary judge. You start carefully calculating every post, analyzing whether an anonymous audience will approve. When approval doesn't come, the lack of engagement hits as an indictment of your character, leaving behind internalized shame. So the very thing we did to cure our isolation ends up backfiring entirely. By performing for the big other, we end up feeling exposed, judged, and fundamentally more alone than when we started. Carrying the weight of that constant, grueling performance exhausts people to the point where they seek out total sensory escape. It usually starts small. You might try to melt into a packed concert crowd, lose yourself in a massive fandom, or just doomscroll. It's a way to stop being perceived as an individual, so the judge can't see you. But the urge runs so deep that there is now a booming industry built around giving people an extreme, physical version of this escape. We see it in float tanks, week-long silent retreats, and strict digital detoxes. These are physical environments designed to give you a safe, contained taste of absolute nothingness. Modern life requires such an exhausting performance of existence that millions of people are willing to spend billions of dollars just to buy a temporary break from being themselves. This diagram shows the tragic irony of the system. Retreating into sensory deprivation or disappearing into a crowd provides brief relief from judgment. But this retreat ensures that the very isolation you're trying to escape remains intact. Running away from the imaginary judge doesn't solve the problem. It simply restarts the exact same cycle of loneliness that drove you to perform in the first place. Stopping the cycle requires dismantling the judge's power by choosing to stop performing for it entirely. The alternative to that performance is terrifying, but it works. It requires letting actual, flawed human beings see the messy reality of who you are. People might not agree with every single thing about you, but being imperfect does not disqualify you from connection. Real people choose to stick around precisely because they see your flaws and accept them anyway. Relief is found by stepping out of the shadows and letting yourself be authentically known. If you are struggling with these feelings right now, please reach out to someone you trust or connect with a mental health professional. You deserve support, and you don't have to carry it alone.